You've decided to go and hunt gas in Mongolia. Now, we've had a few companies on, Australian companies on recently who have tried and given up the ghost in regards to doing business in Mongolia. How long have you been operating there?
So I personally went there for the first time nearly 10 years ago. I know the country pretty well. We obtained the first license of our type in the country, which meant it took a long time of working with the government or governments there, because they've got a democracy and power changes hands frequently. So that was quite a lengthy process, but one that was very valuable in building up relationships which are enduring and actually are really benefiting us just now in this time of COVID, because we can still operate with our local team, local contractors, people that we know and trust over a considerable period. So we haven't just blown in and done a deal and then wonder how we're actually going to go and deliver on it.
Okay, so talk to us about the permitting and licensing process over there. At the moment you're doing, well, I'm reading about doing 2D. Presumably there's a lot more that you're going to need to do going forward. So what is the process? How much does it cost? How long does it take? What are the restrictions?
So the form of the license is a common one in the developing world, and that is called a production sharing contract, or a PSC. It's basically just a device that determines how taxes are paid and endures for a long time. Gas is less profitable than oil normally, so the fiscal terms are accordingly more favorable to the investor for us. We own 100% of that. We don't have any pesky partners. There is no process for a government entity to back in, as occurs in, for instance, some other countries like China or Indonesia. And so we've really got a strong degree of freedom of operation to pursue exploration in what we hope is world's best practice form, which we've taken from Australia and imparting that knowledge to Mongolia. We use local subcontractors, because one of the key benefits of coal seam gas or coal bed methane, depending on what you call it, it really depends on where you are, is that it's low cost. We're not drilling wells thousands of meters deep. We're drilling wells hundreds of meters deep. That means that we can use minerals rigs rather than expensive oil rigs. Mongolia's got an extensive mineral sector, and so the capability to drill what we want to do already exists in local firms, and that is even more important in this time of COVID, where importing people is impossible, importing equipment is hard. And indeed, earlier this year, we trialled supervising a particular test in a well with some people in Brisbane who the previous year flew out to Mongolia to supervise the test, but this year managed to do it online. This was in the Gobi Desert, which will provide images of camels and dunes, but in reality, you can get Wi-Fi there, and you put a satellite dish up, you can drive there, and it's pretty good operating environment, not only for communication, but even for weather. We can operate all year round there. And then going to your question on cost, these are shallow wells, as I say. These are Mongolian subcontractors, not American ones, so they are cheaper. And what we are finding is that coal seam gas or coal bed methane is by far one of the cheapest forms of gas exploration. We can spend hundreds of thousands on a well, not millions or tens of millions on a well. And so we have a lot of bang for our buck. Investors have liked that. I mean, you mentioned that it's been a bit of an unloved sector, but we've done pretty well this year. We got whacked by COVID, as everybody did in the dull days of March. We raised money then at 2 cents, and now we're trading at 13, 14 cents. And of course, you'll always expect me to say we've got a long, long way to go over and beyond that. But we have delivered, and we can believe we can continue to do so.
Okay. You actually sort of touched upon the next question, which was why are you in Adelaide, not in Mongolia, managing this? By saying that you're able to remotely supervise a local team that you're using there. So is that the way forward? Is that the way you're going to manage this? Or, do you actually want to be able to get back in the country? Because it's also about relationships with, with the MRPAM,
Yeah.
they need to see your face. They need to know what you're doing. You need to inform them. So what's the future look like?
I completely agree that in a normal environment, one needs to visit the ground extensively, pay respects, hear messages that you don't necessarily get in a Zoom call, and deal with people both locally in the area we operate as well as in the capital city, the regulators, as you mentioned. That's not feasible in time of COVID, but we do have an enormous bank of goodwill, relationship building with which to draw down upon. I would hope to be able to go back next year, but of course that's an unknowable at this point. Mongolia's been remarkably efficient in managing COVID. They effectively shut their borders at the end of January, and that means that there have been no community transmission incidents, no deaths, and that's a record that they want to maintain very strongly, and accordingly they will be cautious about reopening borders until there's a vaccine or similar comfort like that. But to repeat, we have proven that we can operate since February with distant supervision. Not only us, but experts that we need to bring in at particular stages of a well's testing performance, for example.